This is the slide deck we'll be using for our workshop. I want to set the scene here. Imagine you're a manager of a data team, and you work for this company called Ride, car service company. Previously, its model is similar to taxi. So you hail them from the street or you call with your phone to set up an appointment. But you, as the manager of your data team, have come up with a revolutionary new idea. You say to yourself, let's make this more like rideshare so people can take their smartphone and just book a trip right there and done. You need to present to the CEO and get their buy-in for this idea. You come to this workshop to see if this slide deck is up to par for executive presentation. So let's go through it. Let's check out what it looks like. Ride 2.0, a revolutionary car service. You talk about the plans for your team, what your team is hoping to build. Geo-aware devices, one-click requests, pre-specify these locations with coordinates, and you can book trips from your phone. You say, we're going to use RIM OS, this new operating system, because according to this data, highest percentage of smartphone requests. It'll have 3 cool new features with RIM operating system: intelligent scheduling, route optimization, payment, reputation, and utilization tracking. Fantastic. And you say, with forecasting, we can improve pickup. So instead of cars just roaming around aimlessly, instead we'll tell them exactly where statistically optimized positions they should stay in so they can get their new ride quickly. I want to hear from all of you. Imagine you are the CEO listening to this, seeing this slide deck. What is missing here that you as the CEO would need to know? Imagine a great CEO. What would make you say thumbs up for this project or thumbs down? What is missing from this deck? Put your thoughts in the comments. Again, what we looked at is a series of slides describing what we plan for our technical team to do, but something is missing here. Awesome. Drivers is noted in the comments. Cost and revenue estimates, fantastic. Thank you, David. Any other thoughts? What is missing from this deck that would make it better for executive presentation? Why invest now? Great. Risks. Thank you, Russia. A slide on the needs and why they matter, something to build excitement. A story. I love it, Alistair. And that's exactly what I'm looking for. Because as you can see from this deck, I'm going to show it to you again. Title slide is fine. But here we look at the feature. Here we look at another feature. Here we look at another feature and another feature. Where are all the benefits? How will this help me as the CEO make more money for my company? Where is the storytelling? Instead of just telling me all these fantastic things that this new application can do, how will it benefit the company? How will it benefit me as the CEO? That's what you need. You need to put this into a story. So let's do that. Let's make this better. To do that, let's define what a story is. A story is not just a list of facts. A story is the connective tissue that explains why those facts matter. And on top of that, what do we need to do about those facts? So a story is what, so what, and now what? What's going on? Why does it matter? What do we do next? If you don't have those last crucial components, so what and now what, it's not a story. So let's make this into a story by adding those pieces. First, we begin by setting the scene and establishing the bad before. Why is there a problem now? Why do we need to do something different to begin with? As an analogy, I'd like to bring to your attention a story you may all know very well, Harry Potter, the Boy Wizard. It's a series you may have seen. It's a series you may have even grown up with. In this series, the story begins by setting the scene, establishing the bad before. Harry Potter starts out his life, 11 years old, in this dilapidated house with an abusive aunt and uncle. Desperately wants to leave and have something better with his life. We're setting the scene in the same way here. Bad before. Ride 1.0, our current service, has several issues: aging technology, hailing done by phone or by hand. Who does that anymore? Even worse, it's a bad system in general. Drivers are underpaid. The cars that we use are so expensive. We need to do something different. So what happens in a story? We have an inciting incident. Bad before, something happens that we switch gears. So here we're saying Ride 2.0, my idea as the manager, will change all of that. We'll have efficient on-demand service, guaranteed pickup, cashless billing system. In Harry Potter, the inciting incident is a wizard named Hagrid comes to Harry's house and says, Harry, you're a wizard. You have a destiny ahead of you. I'm going to take you to that destiny. We've switched gears. We're going from the bad before to an ideal after, to that destiny. So how do we get there? As I mentioned before with the original deck, We had a bunch of features lined out, but no benefits, not the why those features matter. Here I've outlined all of those benefits for you. Pickup is guaranteed. 5 minutes to get a new ride. On-demand service, average of $30 plus tax versus the previous $60 plus tax. Look at how fantastic this is. In the same way, Hagrid and everybody else that Harry meets explains to him why his destiny is so important. There's this evil wizard, Voldemort, who's wreaking havoc over the wizarding community, and Harry's destiny is to stop this wizard. So over the course of the story, we then progress to go through a series of trials and tribulations. Harry goes on adventures to understand himself better as a character. And in the same way, we're going to go through the next series of slides explaining why this new use case for Ride 2.0 is so beneficial for our organization. First of all here, numerous opportunities to use it, all these kinds of pickups and drop-offs. Booking is easy. No more dead time driving around aimlessly. Cars are in those statistically optimized positions. We have a new app that we're planning. And the reason for this is because smartphone popularity is rising. Everybody has a smartphone, nearly. So why not use that technology to our advantage? Excuse me. RimOS, the operating system, is our target because of this data. As you saw before, fantastic features. And why do those features matter? Because we're going to make more money with those features. Ride currently, in our current market, we have 2 of the top 10 US cities. Look what happens when we use this new operating system, or this new application. We will have 7 of the top 10 US cities, and look how much more potential money there is in that graph. And here's some more contextual detail. New York, where we are now, has the highest market rank. We're going to expand to more of them. This is where we focus most of our market, non-airport retail trips. This is a context for the global market in general. And finally, we reach the end of our story. So just as Harry went through those series of trials and tribulations, those adventures, to understand himself as a character, develop his skills, we've shown you all the beneficial use cases for this new application. And now we reach the end. Here's where we're headed next, the ideal after. We need from you, the CEO, $100,000 in funding to develop all these fantastic features we've outlined, with all the benefits that we've outlined. Just as in Harry Potter, the call to action at the end is, since I'm talking about the first movie, the call to action is read the next book or watch the next movie. See how Harry continues to develop his destiny to destroy the evil wizard Voldemort. That's storytelling. It takes you from the what, the so what, to the now what, from the bad before to the ideal after through this transformation. That's storytelling. I'm going to pause here for any questions. Anyone in the audience have any questions about any of the material so far? Again, what we've covered is storytelling is not just talking about features, it's talking about the benefits of those features, what we need to do about those benefits. What, so what, now what, to create this deck. Any questions? Please do put it in the chat. And awesome, thank you for the comments earlier. Margaret, timeline and for implementation would be fantastic. From a product management standpoint, how long will it take us to develop these new features? And Havsep, are we meeting our objectives? Exactly, we need to outline the objectives and whether we met them. Anthony asks, how do you handle interruptions? It's a fantastic question because in the executive presentations I've been a part of, executives ask so many questions. And I'm gonna actually address that question in the next portion of this workshop, where I show you how to make sure you avoid interruptions by making a concise main presentation. But to the question, if you receive a question from the CEO, you can answer it right then and there, or establish from the beginning, hey, to the CEO, I'm gonna take 5 minutes for my presentation, and after that, I will open up for questions. That way you set the scene and set the expectations for how the presentation will go. Any other questions from anyone else in the audience? David asks, if your company lacks the supporting data to drive some of these slides, how can we offset that gap? Our goal is always to have data to back up our arguments. If you don't have the data to support some of these ideas, but you still have a time pressure to present them, then it would be useful to gather some other form of logical evidence, because there are 3 pillars to create an effective presentation. And these are pillars that the Greek philosopher Aristotle established so many years ago in our past. Ethos, pathos, and logos. You need to establish ethos with your authority, bringing in sources to say, I know what I'm talking about. You need pathos, the emotion part of the component, to say, CEO, you need to take these recommendations because this will benefit the company. You get them really excited about it. And last, you need logos. Often this comes in the form of data-driven recommendations at the graphs that I showed you. So you do need that component in some form. Perhaps if your company doesn't have it, you can conduct surveys of your own to see what is the sentiment within the company and different teams for this product. Show some kind of logical evidence to support your argument. So if you don't have the data, find a different way to support it using different kinds of sources. Abukari's question is, how will you present incomplete data on the demand of executives? Ideally, you wouldn't need to present that kind of data unless you'd fully fleshed it out. But if there, again, is that time pressure to present it right then and there, establish from the beginning, here's what I'm presenting to you, but here are the caveats, here are the disclaimers. Understand that this number that you see here, you can't trust it completely because we're still working things out, but we wanted to give you a preliminary estimate. So just, again, establish at the very beginning what the expectations are when they're seeing it, so that they have a clear understanding of where to proceed. Ibukun's question is, where should we focus our discussion? Where is the meat in this kind of presentation to the executives? What I'm going to go into the next section about is exactly how to achieve that. Because in executive presentations, there will be tons of questions, as was asked previously. How do you make sure that the presentation is not just you monologuing to them, but actually create a conversation? So if there are no other questions, I will proceed into that next section. All right, I'm going to move forward to the next part. As was identified, there's a problem here in the structure that I've established. As technically minded professionals, we think not just about the problems we need to address, not just about the solutions we need to use to solve those problems, but the constraints. When you're writing SQL, you think about, how do I handle the nulls? When you write code of any kind, you think about, what are the edge cases, so that when I test it, I've acknowledged those. In presentations, it's just the same way. For executive presentation, the topic of today, what is the constraint? The constraint is executives are short on time and short on attention span. You need to get to the point quickly. And look how long it took us to get to the point in the current deck. First, we set the bad before, inciting incident. This is where we need to go next. This is why we should change things. All these benefits for our features, benefits, all these graphs. Cool. This is a cool chart. Fantastic. This is why we can make more money. Okay, here's some more information about that. Here are some scenarios that we might run into. And then finally, after 30 minutes or so, we get to the point, which is, CEO, we need $100,000 in funding for this. Not good. At this point, the CEO is probably looking at their watch and saying, how much longer is this going to take? Or they've already left the room. You need to get to the point quickly. And for that reason, I'm going to change this structure. What are some of your thoughts? Put them in the comments. How do you think we should change the structure of this presentation so that we get to the point quickly? We put the bottom line up front. Put your thoughts in the comments. And awesome. Thank you, Andy, for that comment. Yes, when presenting incomplete data, include the caveats and give that extra bridge to where you want to go next. With additional data and time, here's where we can go from here. Awesome, David. Start with the ask first. Excellent. Any other thoughts? How to make this more concise so the CEO is not desperate to leave the room, but you address their needs concisely and quickly. Raphael, as a team lead, the Minto pyramid principle. Perfect. It's exactly what we're actually going to go over next. So let's do that. This is the first slide now. Exactly, Margaret, which is ask for the funding as the first slide and the features supporting it. And this goes to Raphael's idea of the pyramid principle, which we're going to go over. Instead of what, so what, now what, which was the previous structure, we're going to flip the script and flip the story. Now what, so what, what. So you can imagine the story of Harry Potter. Instead of saying, oh, Harry Potter started at this horrible previous conditions in this house with abusive aunt and uncle, and then he went on these adventures, and finally he gets to the end and destroys Voldemort. Instead, you say at the very beginning, Harry's destiny is to destroy Voldemort. Okay, why is that? Well, Voldemort has done all these horrible things in the Wizarding community. We need to stop him. Okay, how is Harry going to do that? The final what? Well, here's all the adventures Harry goes on to achieve that. In the same way, we're going to do that for this deck. The first slide is ask for the funding. This is what we need from you, CEO, what you need to think about for the rest. $100,000. Then the so what? Why does it matter? Well, if you give us $100,000 in funding, we can make this company so much more money. Look at that on this graph. And finally, the what. Here are all the benefits that we will achieve once we accomplish that. And that's it. Now, this is a simplification for the purposes of this webinar, but you understand the principle. Now what, so what, concise, let's say 5-minute presentation to the CEO. Now, justifiably, you may say to me, well, what about all that other information that I had in all those other slides? The CEO needs to know about that, right? That is what the appendix is for. I've put all those other slides that I showed you before into the appendix. So we have those short 3 slides at the beginning. Everything else is the appendix. For example, let's say the CEO, after I give this short 5-minute presentation to the CEO and say, now what, so what? CEO, now we engage in conversation. The CEO says, here on this slide, you said average of $30 plus tax. And in our current system, it's $60 plus tax. Why is it so expensive right now? And you say, I have the answer to that. Right now, we have aging technology. Our cars, according to this graph, are so expensive. And that's why we have such high prices. The CEO says, okay, I understand. Now go back to that other slide. Go back. Say, okay, this slide, no, the previous one. This slide, I get it, but I don't understand the bigger picture. How I see our expansion, but what does this look like on a national scale or an international scale? Then you say, I have an answer to that. Here's my appendix. Here is what it looks like on a national scale, the highest market ranked cities. This is what we need to focus on in terms of the market composition. This is what it looks like on a global scale. 2023, $4.3 billion for the rideshare market, and it will continue to grow. So on and so forth. All these extra slides in the appendix now address every single question the CEO could possibly think of. And that's what's impressive. So what we've done here is now what, so what, everything else in the appendix. Any other questions at this point? And this is the last opportunity for questions before I close things out. And again, what we've established is flip the script, flip the story. Get to the point first. Instead of having the CEO watch a 2-hour movie of Harry Potter, condense it to the 5-minute synopsis that they'll find friendly and approachable. That's the key. Any questions at this point? Awesome, David. Yes, saving the extra slides for questions and follow-up. That's how we ensure that conversation is addressed. So to the earlier question from, I believe it was, let's see if I can find it. There was an earlier question about interruptions and how we handle them. From Anthony, how do you handle interruptions? And the key is make your presentation so short, the CEO hears everything they need to hear, and then you go into all the questions afterwards. And to Ibukun's question, where should you focus the discussion, the meat? It's at the end. After you conclude your 5-minute presentation, then you go into the details here. Awesome, Kobe, glad it was helpful. Any other questions from anyone on what's covered before I wrap things up today? Alistair asks, presumably this would shorten our presentations to a fraction of the original, then have more time spent on questions appendix. And yes, that is the goal. For CEOs, in my experience with them, and what was cautioned to me before I entered my very first executive presentation was they're going to ask you a lot of questions. To avoid becoming flustered, getting bombarded with questions as you're trying to get through this whole 30-minute deck, make the deck short at the beginning. Get to the point, and then most of your time is in the discussion phase where you can banter with the CEO, address all of their pain points and challenges. That's what will make them feel reassured, and that you've clearly done your homework because you have all 50 appendix slides. A question came up. Most of your reports are a health check. How do you apply these fundamentals in such scenarios? In general, focus on the idea of the framework, which is now what, so what. If you're just doing a health check, what do people need to do about this information? Why is it important to them? Why couldn't your health check report or presentation just be an email? The fact that you're presenting it means it is important and people need to take action on it. So address the action up front. Then talk about why it matters, and then add more contextual detail about the numbers themselves. So it's not just thinking about this in terms of creating a new product, let's say, but in general, the framework is what do we do about this? Why does it matter? What's going on? Gisela asks, so it's the standard 5-minute presentations to executives or others. What I'm conveying in this workshop is a general best practice that you can then apply to the individual context of your organization. Every organization is different. Executive presentations may be run differently for you. You might be prescribed how to present to executives. They might say you need to use this certain slide deck, this certain format, this certain layout. But if there are no restrictions in place, this is what I would recommend. Short main presentation at the beginning, mostly questions and discussion in appendix at the end. Andy's question is, if you end up spending a lot of time on questions and nitty-gritty after the presentation, how would you transition back to the main takeaways at the end of the meeting? Perfect. What I always recommend when it comes to presentations is don't end with just Q&A. You always have to come back and state your main takeaways. Because think about it, a presentation is an experience. You're giving people information and what to do about that information. You want them to feel something based on this information. So you're taking them on this journey. Imagine Harry Potter. He's going through all these adventures. You're really feeling for Harry Potter, wanting him to win. And then you end with a flat ending at Q&A, where you're just going back and forth. There's no big climactic moment. So at the very end, after you finish all the questions, come back and give that climactic moment. Say, these are all the takeaways I have here. These are the action items that we've discussed, you and the CEO. After the conversation, you say, okay, the CEO says, all right, let me think about this. And you say, okay, here are the next steps. I'll follow up with you in a week, and we'll see if we can approve this funding. And if they say, okay, I'm good to give it right here, then you say, okay, after the funding is approved, here's what you should expect. So come back in with the action items and takeaways at the very end, yes. And Christian's question is, do you have a sample you can show us? This deck would be that sample of a kind of executive presentation where at the very beginning you have the short main presentation and the rest appendix. But again, simplified for the purpose of this short webinar. But you can imagine how it could be generalized to your individual organization. Awesome. Now I'm going to wrap things up. And here, as Raphael, you mentioned, the inverted pyramid, this is the framework to take into your back pocket. Stories are what, so what, now what? What's going on? Why does it matter? What do we do about it? Building up momentum and then concluding. You flip the script for executive presentations. First, it's what do you need to do about this? Then why does it matter? And finally, the contextual detail. Imagine a newspaper. Headline at the top, short and punchy, exactly what the person needs to know if they should continue reading. Then you go into some more background detail about it, and then more contextual detail if they're still there to read. Same approach for executive presentation. And after the triangle is complete, everything else is appendix. And that's what's impressive, because if you can anticipate every single question the CEO will ask, and you have data and statistics and slides to back it up, they'll be like, wow, this person put a lot of thought into creating this. They know what they're talking about. I can trust them. And trust is the key to gaining buy-in and persuading your audience.